This is Support is Sexy, episode 587, with author and trauma-informed specialist, Regina Louise. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elaine Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year and welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so happy to have you here. You know, it just would not be the same without you. And today I want you to get ready for a powerful, revealing, open, loving, just spirit-filled episode with Regina Louise. And Regina is an author and also a trauma-informed specialist. And her area of expertise is really helping all children, really, but especially foster care children, learn how to deal with the things, the challenges that they experience in foster care. It's a lot of things that a lot of us might not think about. Also, if they've endured any kind of abuse, Regina helps children get through that, and she is a walking example of the possibilities of survival, but also for all of us to take note of the importance of listening to your spirit. So in this episode, we talk a lot about spirit, intuition, letting those things guide you, especially when it's a matter of your survival. So I want you to get to the story, so I'm going to wrap up the intro so you can hear it right away. But I want to tell you, one, if you are enduring any kind of abuse, trauma, anything like that, you must get support, get help. And in this episode, Regina talks about what she did in order to get help. Also know that whatever is happening is not your fault. Do not take it personal. Do not blame yourself. We talk about that as well. And also, I want you to remember, as Regina says, to trust your spirit, trust your intuition, especially when it's telling you it's time to make a move. So I really appreciate Regina for being so open and sharing her story with us, a painful story in the way that she did, and leaving us all inspired, because I know that you will be inspired after listening to this. So now, without further ado, Regina Louise. So Regina, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to chat with you.
It's nice to be here, Elaine. Thank you for the invitation.
Excellent. So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
Wow. I first fell in love with the idea of working for myself and starting a business. I was 35 at the time. And I knew that I was a hairdresser, and I knew that I could not work for other people. It would not work out for me because I have a different set of values that are and were hard won and time tested. And the way that I am, it would not line up with the way I experienced myself with other people. So I knew that what would probably be in my best interest is to work with and for myself with a like-minded other. So I started my first salon when I was 34. And then the second salon by 35, the third salon by 36.
Wow. So do you still have those salons today?
No, I sold them because at 37, I started writing. And that was basically, I see myself as an accidental writer, accidental speaker, accidental advocate, because the way I grew up, I couldn't write my way out of a paper bag, but I've always had this ability to speak. I've always been quite the loquacious one, to put it in a positive light. Mm-hmm. I have been told I talk a lot.
You talk a lot, right?
And all of that. But I'm grateful for that. I've learned to embrace that, which is another conversation. But yes, I ventured into writing. in my late 30s, and my first book came out when I was 40. And, it's just been this incredible journey. I did not, whether it was a hairdresser or a writer, these things were accidental. I had the skill, I had the capacity, but I can't say that I was just, hell bent on working for myself, other than what I just said about knowing that I don't work well with others, because I have this work ethic that could be brutal for some. And I like to live an integrous life. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And if I'm going to change the finish line, and to tell you, oh, that agreement we just had, I just decided to change that. I don't do well with people who don't do that. So I just knew this isn't working for me. And the way that I worked with and for other people, and my experiencing, the values and ethics of organization was do as I say and not as I do. That just didn't work for me. So I realized in time, okay, I have to change this.
So what was your first step when you decided to open that salon, after you decided you were going to make that move? Because you mentioned that you opened basically one every year for 3 years. What was your first move during that time?
My entire life, Elaine, has been, how do I say this, has been guided by dreams and spiritual nuances. So I will have a situation where I need understanding and guidance. And what I have always done is go inside of myself, get quiet, and take it into the dream world. So I'll take whatever's going on, whether that be a question or that be a complication that I need more clarity on. I visualize it, take it into the dream world, and 10 out of 10 times when I awake in the morning, I have my answer. And then I take the action steps to follow that. And 10 out of 10 times, that which the clarity or the action that I need to take leads me to the result that sometimes I'm hoping for, and other times results that I could have never imagined. So it's the magic of believing myself and believing in myself. So that's the first step, is to go to myself, ask myself, trust myself, and then follow through with what I get.
Mm-hmm. So do you remember what then the dream illustrated for you when you thought about the salons, or just opening your own? I don't know if you dreamt specifically about a salon, but just opening your own business in general?
Right. Great question. So the way it worked out is I was in a salon that I was not content with. And the first thing that happened was I thought, you know what? I am meant for bigger, better things. I know this. I feel this. Bigger and better is budding in me. I don't have the space or time for it, though, because this particular job was demanding so much and giving so little. And one day I was having my lip waxed, and I remember springing up from the chair thinking, oh my goodness, I need to tell my story. And the title of the book came up, Ward of the Court. And I thought, but the only way that I'll ever be able to tell my story, I'll have to work for myself, because I'm a very valued employee to this company, but they're making all the profit off my skill. And I'm teaching for them. So all of my time, as well as being a parent, was being, maximized by them as opposed to me. So then I thought, how in the world could I ever write my book So I asked my boss, I said, I kind of pinned it on my kid and said, I need to be at home a little more with my son, and I need Wednesdays off. So on those Wednesdays, I began investigating what it would mean to write a book. Like, what the heck? I'm not a writer. I barely finished grammar school, although I attended a performing arts high school. It's like, I don't know where this is going, but I will follow it. And so in those Wednesdays, I gained confidence. And then I thought, okay, I really need to write this book, but how? I'm going to need another day off. And I know she's not going to give me that. And so I went to bed and I said, Spirit, tell me what it is I need to know. And in the dream, I was guided. My spirit said, when you go outside tomorrow morning, look up. Just look up. So the next day, and it said, in the dream, I saw marble. I heard high heels clicking on marble, and then the wainscoting in the building was marble. So there were marble tiles that met at the floor and moved, I'd say, 2 to 3 feet up the wall. So that would be, I call it the wainscoting. Mm-hmm. So the next day, I go to work, and the salon is on the poshest street in San Francisco, Union Square. And when I got to the salon, which was on the second floor, I looked up. But I'm thinking, I already work there. Why did my dream tell me to look up? And then I turned, and then I saw what's called the Shreve Building, which had Shreve Jewelers in it, which is, a historic, iconic jeweler for San Francisco. And I just made a point to go to the Shreve Building. At lunch, I walked over to the Shreve Building, and this beautiful Black man, the engineer with this beautiful bald head, comes out. I'm like, and the doorman was standing there, and then this brother shows up. I'm like, hi, do you rent spaces? He's like, yep, but as you know, the .comers have taken everything, and I only have one left. I was like, one what left? He said, one studio. I said, oh my God, can you show me? He's like, well, I'm on lunch. I said, me too. So if we both hurry, maybe I can see it and we can get some lunch. Actually, I'll buy your lunch if you'd like that. He laughed and took me up to the 11th floor, which is basically the penthouse. I got off the elevator and my heels were clacking on marble. And there was wainscoting 3 feet from the base of the floor up the sides of the walls in marble. The space that he took me to was directly off the elevator. So when you walked into the building and you came off the elevator, the space that was available was right there. I walked in and I just said, how much? He said, okay, let's do this. I went back to my job and then began to divorce myself from the only way I'd ever really known to work, which was for someone else. And one of the things that was incredible about it is the salon I worked in was exquisite and beautiful and still is. And when you took the elevator from the ground floor, you walked right into the salon, you would see my seat. My chair would be the first seat you saw in that salon. So I thought, I don't want to create an environment where clients will miss the beauty of what they've been receiving. So it was interesting to make that connection that this salon would be similar for my clients than the salon that I currently was at. So that made me think, everything in the salon I'm going to put together, it has to be cutting edge. It has to be exquisite and advanced in some ways, because I never want clients to miss I didn't want them to come to the new salon and miss what they were getting at the other salon. So I had to really go all out and rely on my creativity and do very cutting edge designs and And my partner, I had a partner, and she was my assistant at the big salon. So I just asked my assistant to come over. I'm going to start this, and you will be a stylist, because I was also the teacher. So I was the teacher and she was my assistant. So, she had nothing but great things to gain. And then we went over, we pulled our money, and we created, which still to this day is one of the best of the Bay salons.
Wow, that's amazing. And thank you for sharing, especially the fullness of your story and the fact that I wrote down where you wrote, Spirit, tell me what I need to know. And I think it just speaks to, well, for you, obviously, it's been a very important part of your life with taking your dreams to bed, as you said. I love that. And, but also listening, because sometimes we do hear, the spirit or intuition, whatever you want to call it, that says, look up, or says, this is what it could look like, or, trust this, and we don't listen to that voice. So it sounds like you have made it a practice, even if not while you were younger, certainly now, of listening to that voice.
Oh, absolutely. And just so you know, actually, when I was younger, that's when the practice began. I just, and it's funny because I'm working on my third book, and I'm working on the proposal actually for a very incredible editor who I hope she finds what I'm going to offer her interesting and want to pursue a writer relationship with me. But one of the things that's really interesting, especially based on what you just said, is I, like so many of the adults in my life as a child, I have discounted the richness and fullness of my spirit as a little girl. And as I'm preparing the proposal for this third book, I am mesmerized and dumbfounded by the strength, the temerity, and the gift of my younger self. And I've grown up in a culture that says, don't be too self-aggrandizing, don't be too self-important, don't be too self. But that can't work for children who all they have is their self. You need all those qualities in order to survive. So as I was writing yesterday, preparing my first chapter, I realized, oh my, it was first my youngest self that saved my life. And she has been an integral part of everything I do. And I have a relationship with my emotional self, my emotional child, in ways that I will never, ever forget, or I can never allow myself to forget, because the gifts of listening, the gifts of taking the dreams to bed started with her.
And now let's talk a little bit, since you mentioned that, about your childhood and what you went through growing up and your experiences, especially in the foster care system. You grew up between 30 different foster care, group homes, and facilities by the time you were 16. Is that right?
That's correct.
So let's talk about them. What was that experience specifically like for you, especially now that you've given us sort of an indication of what seems like what kind of young person you were, but how did that all work together or not work together? How did that experience shape you as a young person?
That's such a huge question. That's a book in and of itself. I think in some ways, as I have a lot of distance between what happened then and the person I am now. And as I reflect upon that, I saved my life by turning myself over to the foster care system. And in some ways, as I look back, without it, I can't imagine how my spirit would have thrived.
What do you mean you saved your life by turning yourself over? That you turned yourself into foster care or went voluntarily? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
To escape something at home.
I left Texas at 11 after being brutally beaten and having my caretaker tell me she was going to beat the black off of me. I couldn't I couldn't imagine. And I believed her because many, many times she attempted. Many times she beat me with a green water hose or a Hot Wheel track or a cord, the old corded. They were corded cords that came off of the Westinghouse irons, the stainless steel irons,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like a whip.
The thick
And many
cords,
times
yeah.
she would whip me to the point where I could see the pink of my flesh, the white. I could see it was just beyond crazy. And I just couldn't let her do that to me. It's like, you're not going to beat the black off me. I haven't done anything to you. And, I was told that I talked too much and this and that. And it's like, okay, then this isn't where I need to be. And I left. And in leaving, I started a life of living a migratory life in my own country. I felt like an immigrant in my own country as a child. And I ended up in North Carolina to visit a mother I barely knew. She had a boyfriend who wanted to violate me. She couldn't really protect me, didn't know how. She was so young and damaged herself. She sent me to my father. He worked for Barry White at the time. He was not available. And his white wife was not ready to take on his illegitimate black child when she had her children. They were both, 28 when they met me, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So, just a host of unfortunate events. And when my father left me with my stepmother to go and work with Barry and do his thing because his album dropped, I knew that this woman did not want me around. And so I, acted in a way that exhibited what I felt like inside, which is, you don't want me around. And when my father returned, she and I had gotten into an altercation and my father chose her. And he told me, you have to go. Well, I found a friend to take care of me. She was a classmate. He agreed to pay this woman to take care of me. And then within a month of him making that agreement, he reneged and she was not having it, baby. And she was all about being sanctified and all about the Lord. And the Lord basically told her there was no room in the inn. And this woman commenced to just beating me up until the day that I had to beat her back, literally, not metaphorically. And, she was huge and angry. And so she had the advantage. And I was a child not coming from the golden rules of, do unto others as you would have them do unto yourself. Honor thy mother and thy father. And to me, she was that surrogate. So it was very difficult for me to defend myself against this woman. But I had to think, you know what? I'm not going to let anybody beat me again. This stops right here, right now, today. And so I called the police department and it told them what was going on and said, if I turn myself in, will you take care of me? And they were like, come on down. And I came down. They put me in jail. Then the next day they drove me to a children's shelter. And I didn't really know it was the day before my 13th birthday. I didn't even really know that.
Mm.
So yes, I turned myself in and I have listened to that same source of connection my entire life. So when I think about what foster care has done in the long game, it was the foundation that saved my life because I knew no one would beat me. No one would hit me. And for me, that was huge. I just did not enjoy people putting hands on me. There was something in me that when someone put their hands on me, I would lose it. I would go all out to save me. And I knew it. Like, no, you don't get to do that. I'm gonna die trying to save me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was willing to do that.
Regina, first, let me say I'm sorry that you experienced it. Anyone, but for you, would experience something like that growing up, especially at any age, certainly, but especially at such a young age, and then at 12 and 13, making decisions to literally having to save your own life. And I appreciate you just sharing with us so openly your experience and how you got through that time, really listening to your spirit, and also your survivor spirit too.
Girl, this is hitting me today. Oof. Oof.
Yeah, I can imagine how painful it is to share that or to remember that time. So I so appreciate you sharing. Like I said, I'm just so sorry that happened to you. You sound like you are an incredibly strong, and like I said, a survivor, really strong survivor. Yeah. And then as a child to have gone through that and to be where you are today, and then sharing not only your message with people, but I know you're also a trauma-informed specialist. So you help other people get through these different kinds of trauma.
Right.
Do you need a few minutes?
I'm okay. I'm good.
Okay. Virtual hug from here.
Yeah. Thank you.
How would you say then your experiences, and then as you've told us who you are as a person, plays into the work that you do today? The one part of it, of course, being a writer, but then this other part about being a trauma-informed specialist. What does that mean?
Well, some people have family legacies where they get to hand down traditions, whether that be recipes, whether that be the way they express themselves on a holiday, birthdays, all those celebratory rites of passage, ways in which most people I've ever met and known, that they regale in those things. As for me, I've chosen to put family together as I go, wherever I am, however that happens to be. And so my traditions, if I were to walk in my legacy, and if I were to think about the traditions that I want to hand down, I want to do so from a full heart, from kindness, from intention of helping kids who have nothing, kids who are seen as throwaways or garbage. And someone has to be that person to shift the narrative of a foster child's perceived value. And I can't think of a better person to do it than me, because that's what I had to do for myself. I chose to do for myself. So my experiences have set me up to have a particular set of skills. And those skills are how to grow through what you go through. And that's how my life informs the work I do. I hope to be an emblem of hope. I hope to be an emblem of possibility. I hope to live my life in accordance with what I know is the right way to treat a child, whether they're an immigrant, whether they're unnatural citizen to this society we live in, or those who are born into the lower bastions, if you will, of the socioeconomic landscape. It's my joy to walk and move through the world in such a way that they might think, oh my God, if that Black female unwanted orphan can do this, anything is possible. If she can deal with the racisms, the discriminations, the exclusions, the lack of opportunities that are afforded, Americans, if she can overcome all of this and raise the playing field on inequity and close the gap on her own disadvantage, because that's what I believe I stand for, oh my God, then it's possible. If Jesus can show us a way to be better humans, to be better Christians, and how to love thy neighbor as thyself, then I want to live my life in a way that's emblematic of a similar way. I want to show others how to be and live from their own humanity with dignity and grace and permission.
And being a walking example of that for other children who might be in the foster care system or even who may be out of the system now and trying to find their own way.
Any child, I started in foster care, but there are lots of kids who are lost, who are turned out, who've been adultified, who don't know what it means to occupy the landscape of their own childhood. I want and I am that person who stands for them. And I know it because I choose it. I vow it. Therefore it is. I permit it.
I vow it. Therefore it is. That's powerful. And you said you permit it. What does that mean for you when you say you permit it?
I give myself permission to do what my soul tells me to do. I don't, fight it. I don't overthink it. I don't get in the way. I get out of my own way and I permit something more deeper, more wiser, unconscious to do what it needs to do while I stand back and witness and say yes.
Now, one of the things that you mentioned earlier is that you became an accidental writer at age 40. So I'm interested to hear from you specifically about your memoir. I think this was your first memoir, Somebody, Someone, right? That's being turned into a Lifetime movie in 2019 or 2020?
It's already a movie. It'll just be released in
on Lifetime.
Yeah, it'll be released.
Lifetime.
Yeah, in March, April, or May, whatever they decide.
Excellent. So what would you say then, having spoken about your work and then becoming a writer later on, I shouldn't say later on, 40 isn't, I'm over 40, so 40 is not old. But becoming a writer at 40, something you weren't, like you said, accidental, you weren't planning to do. But what does this sort of recognition of your work or knowing that your work will get out there in this other way mean for you?
Well, it's huge in so many ways. I remember as a young girl, I read a lot and I enjoyed the texture. I enjoyed the varying experiences that characters had, the settings, the fun, the opportunities. Although I write about very dark themes. And I'm grateful that I can and that I'm willing to go back into some tough beginnings and find myself, see myself, validate myself. Because like I said, I had to take hold of my life at a very young age and be the steward of myself at a very young age. So I wouldn't say that I had much of a childhood because it was spent being the steward of my life. I knew that I needed to be the one to do the work that needed to be done. And so as a child, I had to put childish things behind at a very young age. So becoming a writer in some ways has allowed me to be both a child and an adult, because I had to go back. I feel like I said, I left my child behind in a lot of places. All those 30 different places that I lived, I left a piece of my girl back in those places. And as an adult, I feel that I had to grow up to become that adult that could go back and retrieve some of my spirit from these different places. So it has been a blessing And it has been a gift to know that, to understand that, and to do the work of going back. And like, I imagine like a voodoo doll and all these pins are in this little doll. I kind of feel like I've gone back and pulled all the pins of that voodoo doll, all that bad luck, if you will, out of my soul, and held it and nursed it back to its original state, if you will. You know, I kind of think of the metaphor of the Christ as I'm talking to you right now, and I see the value in redemption. I see the value in self-forgiveness. I see the value in forgiving people who could not, and in some cases would not, give me the love I deserved. So writing has been a vice, a vehicle, an opportunity, a gift, a process, a way of moving through the world that allows me to reconnect to my humanity and therefore just be more human.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say your support network looks like today?
I have friends, I have partners, I have lovers. You know, I have different ways of getting my needs met. I have, I have associations. I have a spiritual practice, which is basically just recognizing the spirit in myself and others. I would say my biggest support right now is the way of compassion and forgiveness. That is my biggest support, is to understand none of this stuff is personal, never has been, never really will be, you know, in terms of what my life has been like. So I would say that the work that I do on my soul's behalf is my biggest support.
Mm-hmm. Would you say you've learned that it wasn't personal, but it wasn't anything that you did wrong? Was that an important part of the lesson?
Well, that's what personal means to me, is this isn't about me. Therefore, it automatically exonerates the idea that I'm bad or wrong or flawed. This isn't about shaming me. This isn't my shame. So, you know, one of the things that I think was genius about I'm just going to make an aside here, like the Me Too movement, is I heard a lot of women talk about men enacting their shame upon this woman and bound those women in their shame. Well, I can honestly say, I don't feel that my experience, and I too am, I hashtag me too. I've been a victim in more ways than I even want to think about when it comes to men's predatory practices and the dismissiveness of a woman having the right to have consent. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to digress in that direction. I'm just saying in relationship to shame, I know there's nothing wrong with me, and I know there's never been anything wrong with me. I think that I came about in a time when trauma was not understood, when trauma was not a player that had consideration in what was going on. So I was a victim of ignorances in ways that are too countless to try and have a conversation about. But even as a little girl, when people said stuff to me, I would, sticks and stones may hurt my bones, but words will never hurt, because I had my ass beat. Let's keep this real. So after that, not much of anything was going to shame me or make me feel bad about myself. That to me was the beating me, trying to kill me, beat the black off me. That was some serious mess right there. So saving myself from that realigned me with me. So I didn't really think too much about what other people had to say about me or think about me. That would be a privilege. Like, to me, that's a privilege for people who have a whole lot of time. I've never seen myself as having the luxury to worry about what somebody else has to say about me. That's a luxury for those who literally have time on their hands to ponder. That's not something. So therefore, I'm not one to take certain things too personally, because I'm going to let you know, I don't like what you just did. So how do we repair? How do we reset? Because I'm out of attunement with you right now. Mm-hmm. So you know what I mean? So I'm quick to, I love connection. I love that feeling of belonging, so yeah, I work at not reminding myself, oh, wait a minute, that's not about me. If I really sit here and think about it, that's all about you. Let's talk about that if you're open and interested. That's how I deal with just about everything.
So in closing, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
I would thank my youngest self. And it's so weird that you would ask me this, because yesterday I didn't get your questions till now, or about, an hour ago. And I thought if anybody were to ever ask me who I would thank, some people thank grandfathers, or they thank grandmothers, or they thank a coach or a mentee, or I will say, I will thank my spirit for being brave, for being everything she has been, the courage, the tenacity, the secret know-how, the secret sauce, the secret, she's just a badass, Elaine. And I never want to forget her, because she has made it possible for me to connect. She's made it possible for me to thrive and not just survive. She's made it possible for me to believe when there was no evidence that belief, that belief was possible, as opposed to, hoping against hope. She allowed me to hope against hope. And in doing so, she allowed me to hope against hope to the point where hope became hopeful again. Right? To hope against hope until hope became hopeful again. And she helped me do that again and again and again. She could have said, you know what? This ain't working. My spiritual self, my essence could have said, it's time for this flame to blow out. And every time I ever thought about it, and believe me, I thought about it, she would say to me, not this time. That's not a permission you have.
Mm-hmm. And what a full circle moment to go back to spirits from the beginning of our conversation. It has always been there, even through this conversation. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Now, what would you say are the ways that we can support you? Of course, I'll have links to your website, but tell everyone website or anything else you want us to know so people can follow and learn more about you and your work.
I think it's important for me to say, as an African-American woman, as an African-American writer, as a writer who writes about the underrepresented, it's important for people to read the book, Someone Has Led This Child to Believe. Somebody might think this is a niche, meaning it's particularly about foster care. No, it's particularly about one woman's journey into and back to her own humanity, her own dignity, and her own grace. It's about one woman's triumph of her spirit. And follow me on Instagram, The Real Regina Louise. And let's join together. Let's create a force of nature that will bring attention to the disproportionately represented African-American children in the foster care system. There's a new movie out called Instant Family. I don't understand. I think it's great that these movies come out and they represent a particular demographic, and we're to believe that representation speaks and is a stand-in for us as African American people, well, I beg to differ. Black children are disproportionately in foster care. No one is telling our stories, okay? A Mexican girl, I'm sorry, does not represent my experience, nor does a white girl. Only can an African American girl be representative of me and the children who look like me, which is why when my movie comes out sometime next year, I hope people tune in to Lifetime and show the love. And in the meantime, friend me on Instagram. That's my favorite. And, read the book or don't, but find a way to keep hope alive for children in foster care.
And Someone Has Led This Child to Believe is your second book, right?
Yes, that's
right.
The book that I am currently representing, touring, reading. Invite me, have people invite me. I want to go to Georgia, girl. I need to go to Georgia and eat some real soul food.
Right.
All right. So
are you still in California? Or
yes,
you are,
girl,
okay.
But I need to go to DC.
Okay.
For some reason, I want to go to Bethesda. Don't you like that word? Bethesda, Maryland. I want DC. I want Maryland. I want Georgia. And I need to get back to New York. So invite me to come and do what I do. I speak.
Love that. Well, first of all, we know you're a woman who speaks things and dreams and speaks things into existence. And I love that you said the places you want to go, because we have listeners in 130 countries. So if there's any countries you want to go to, let's let
Paris,
France.
Yes.
Okay.
I want to get to London because their situation with foster care is called Fortnight, right? I mean, I have a one-woman show that I was invited to the Edinburgh Festival, but I couldn't fundraise because I had way too much going on. I'd love to bring my one-woman show to countries to show them what this is about, how I have created art as a means of social justice, as a means of social restoration, so I am open to invitations. Yep.
I have someone else that a friend of mine, Kevin, who has a show called Create Your Life, and he was in the foster care system in California as well, and emancipated at age 18, and goes around and speaks mostly to kids about how to get into college, especially if you don't have family and things to support you and that kind of thing. But he has, like I said, a show, a podcast also. So if you haven't already been in touch with him, or I can let you or Alyssa know about how to get in touch with him, just to continue to share your story on these different platforms.
Great.
Excellent.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Elaine.
Of course. Now,
where are you located?
I am in Prague, in the Czech Republic.
My God.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're an expat. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm traveling with this company called Remote Year, travel company, and we go to a different country each month. So this month in Prague, the end of this week, I'll be in Morocco. Last month it was Cape Town, South Africa, which is amazing. You should go to South Africa. And before that, Valencia, Spain. So I'm sort of on this journey of interviewing women in these countries while I visit, and then women like you via, remotely or via Zoom, and just sharing the stories of women entrepreneurs and working on a book during this time. So it's a lot of creation for me during this time. But usually I'm from New York, but I've been in Atlanta closer to my parents, who were there for the past year before I left to come for this trip.
Wow. Well, it's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And it's interesting that you mentioned South Africa, because a lot of the times when I am speaking, lately especially, I use Nelson Mandela as a benchmark, if you will, for he and I were incarcerated and imprisoned and denied our inalienable human rights at the same time. I was a child, however, and he was an adult. I spent a lot of time in solitary confinement, as did he. So to experience that parallel journey, but I was a child in the freest country in the world, and he was a grown man in a country not so free. So it's just an interesting juxtaposition.
Yes. No mistakes. Definitely said that for a reason. So now before you go, Regina, and again, like I said, I so appreciate you sharing your story so openly with us. What would you say is a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Oh, wow. Elaine, that's ginormous. Well, this, I think, is an axiom. I think it was William Shakespeare who meant it as a quote, but I think it gets overused. But I'm hoping to make this a fresh contribution. And I think it is William Shakespeare is the author. I do believe this: to thine own heart be true. Mm-hmm. That would be my parting, because each of us have such an individual journey, such an individual way to be in the world. And there is something in us that waits ever more to press itself upon the sky from us, to write its name and its existence upon the air in front of us. And if we can be true to our own heart and listen from that heart center, I am convinced that the message in it that is just for you will allow you and me and all of us who believe and trust that to live from a place that's so true and so pure, whether it be for a moment or a lifetime.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that powerful conversation with Regina. Make sure to find out more about her books, everything that she's up to, when she goes on tour, when that movie will be released. Just go to supportissexy.com. Go to that search box and look for Regina, Regina. Her show notes page will pop up with links, resources, all the ways to get in touch with her, and again, to find out what she's up to now. Also, I'm going to include some resources in there if, again, you are somebody that's in a relationship or a situation or something that you need to talk to someone urgently. Going to put just a few resources that I find. But again, I want to stress to you, make sure you get support. We need you here. We need you to survive. As always, I appreciate you being here. It would not be the same without you, honestly and truly. Until we chat again, make sure you remember, support is sexy, and having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.